Welcome again to the Wednesday afternoon Android Developer Relations Office Hours Hangout. I'm Sparky, coming to you from Munich, Germany, and I'm also joined by my teammates Rich and Nick and Peter in London, UK. So with that, let's kick off the Hangout and see what people are talking about in the field of Android development. There's nobody in the Hangout yet. So let's go to the moderator and see what we've got queued up. I've got my moderator right here. It's been a little bit of a slow week in the moderator. Got 3 questions right before the Hangout, so I haven't had time to look into those. But Mitchell from Denmark says, I would love to get a guide to set up the emulator with Android 4.0 and an extra large screen with 1920 by 1200 resolution. Oh my goodness.
Okay.
I've tried all the combinations and they all crash with a bunch of OpenGL errors. Out of memory perhaps? With new devices coming, this is essential. He says further, he's trying API level 15, ARM EABI v7a, no snapshot, etc., etc., etc. My first thought in response to that is testing 1920 by 1200 in an emulator is a recipe for pain, so I hope Mitchell is tough. And my other thought is maybe try playing with the Google TV SDK, which at least comes out of the box ready for 1080p.
That's a good idea, Sparky. I hadn't thought about the Google TV SDK. What are they saying are the reasons for it failing when you use a normal emulator?
He doesn't say, and I haven't looked into it, so
and the other thing is a beta release right now, so it's not guaranteed to work with all hardware configurations and so on, but they are looking for bug reports. So take these stack traces, and if you go to source.android.com, you'll find a link to the where you can file a bug with this information.
Right.
You just don't have enough power. I want to try it myself and see if I can set up one with that screen resolution, especially using the hardware acceleration. I've been really enjoying using the hardware accelerated emulator and making videos from it and things like that. So possibly with that I could push out a 1920, but I'll test it and see what happens.
Are there any devices with that resolution yet that anyone knows of?
Yeah, Toshiba announced one at one of the conferences. Somebody had one there and it had the resolution on it.
Cool.
I thought somebody had a 13-inch tablet, but it was still only 1200 pixel.
Yeah, that's the one I've seen as well. 13 inches
Wow.
of Android glory at high def. I've never seen one in real life though, unfortunately, much as I would love to.
I see we're joined in the Hangout now by our first live developer. Hey Tal, how's it going in Tel Aviv?
It's going pretty well, you know, loads of sunshine, a lot of sun. It's really hot also, but still fun.
Yeah. So what do you do to escape the heat? Do you go to the beach or do you retreat into an air-conditioned building and code?
Well, the air conditioner invention is one of the most amazing inventions on earth, I think.
Yeah, well, I lived in Houston, Texas for 5 years, and I would second you on that one. So,
I don't know how people lived here before the air conditioner. In the summer, especially in the summer, it reaches like 40 Celsius.
I don't think they did. I think they all lived up in Greenland, and as the climate heated up, they retreated further away, and as it cooled, they came further south. I don't think there was any human presence in the Middle East before about 1955. So I see we're joined in the Hangout by Michael Hantler and Paul Blundell. So welcome, guys. Do you have any questions about Android development that you'd like to ask us? So welcome. Crickets.
Michael says in the chat that he's posted something in the moderator.
Oh.
See?
The moderator.
Mike H is like it. Okay. I know in the documentation it says that calling this method will not ensure that files are deleted. But I tried calling delete on exit and nothing seemed to delete the file at all. any instances when it would cause a file to be deleted?
Yes. Reboot. I looked up the documentation on that one, and it says what's exiting when those files are deleted is the virtual machine itself, which is basically up as long as your Android device is running. So it requires a shutdown of Android for those files to get deleted.
Excellent.
Let's see. Okay, that was that question. Wow. Zooming through our prepared content.
Well, we can always talk about subscriptions when we get there. I'm just checking the stream, and it looks like we don't have any other comments right now. I'll just make this the only post. Okay, yeah, so just next one from the moderator. Or are we done from the moderator for this week, Sparky?
Well, let's see. Yeah, we got three a triple question that came in all at the last minute.
Okay.
But before I get to that, let's take this one from Chinmoy in Chennai, India, who says, "I'm a teenager and I'm looking for tips getting started developing on Android. Can anyone help?" Well, yeah, there's lots of places to go for help. I would start by just doing a Google search or go to developer.android.com and start reading the introductory articles.
Or developer.android.com/training.
Yeah.
There you go.
Great.
If you want a slightly more collected list of places to start, I put it all together into a blog post, and you can see it in my personal blog, which, believe it or not, is tellittotheblog.com. So if you go there, you can see sort of a little summary of our advice for places to start looking for introductory Android development materials.
Indeed.
Good tip. But for me, the thing to do is open up some example code and start messing around with it. That's how I got into Android. The day I got my first Android device. File new project, hello world, get it on the device.
Yeah.
And as soon as you have your first app running on the device, which is quite easy, you just plug it in and it should appear in the Android debug bridge. Yeah, you just get hooked straight away, and then being able to have your apps in your pocket is just awesome. So I think your passion will drive you to learn Android at that point. So Stack Overflow and whatever means possible.
Well, I used to start Android. We have this amazing Israeli website that really has a good tutorial now to start the web for Android. That is actually in Hebrew, so maybe to search also for a local language tutorial. You know.
Whoa. So we've got a question coming in the chat window from Noam. He says he's out of memory.
I'm sorry, what did he say?
Out of memory on what?
Out of memory. Is it a bitmap?
Out of heap space? Are you dealing with large images? You need to maybe pre-scale your images before you decode them?
Yes, it's bitmaps. Okay.
Okay. Well, there's an Android training article for that.
There is an Android training article for that.
Large images are ruining my life.
So,
yes, mine too.
While Rich is there scouring around for the correct training course, we've just launched a training article teaching you exactly how to deal with this problem. But we can summarize that as basically load as little as possible. So don't load a full-size image and then scale it down for your UI. Just load it at the size you want. Yes, but I'm building a launcher. Oh dear.
I'll look for both.
Deal with large images. Okay. You might have to deal with large images, but you're never going to show them at their full resolution. I take it.
Here we go. I've got the link.
Oh, Sparky beat me to it.
Makes for great watching. Everyone following on the live stream, watching us read chat comments.
Displaying bitmaps. We also had one on the developer's blog, right?
Probably. Yeah, there was an article a couple of years back that talked about things like calling bitmap recycle and things like that, if I recall.
That's training. I can't remember. Oh, it's in the book.
Any way I can make sure the garbage collector resets memory? Yeah, call recycle on your bitmaps.
Oh.
Call bitmap.recycle. Don't call system.gc.
Yeah, we deprecated system GC starting, I think, with, was it Gingerbread or was it Froyo when we improved our garbage collector?
Yeah, Gingerbread had the updated garbage collector, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's not that it's not reliable, it's that it's just not necessary.
Oh. It looks like the Android training class is the most definitive guide at the moment. System.gc isn't reliable, right? Well, define reliable. It doesn't necessarily do it, no, it just hints that it would be good to do it soon. Most of the time you wouldn't want to call system.gc unless you'd recycled a lot of bitmaps recently anyway, right?
Yeah, it's sort of a high level.
Yeah.
You need more finite control.
If there's processor time, system.gc is going to run anyway. It's going to garbage collect, I should say, anyway. But if you have just cleaned up a whole lot of memory, you can call system.gc to prompt the system that now would be a good time to do it. So it may run sooner than it was going to. But certainly you don't want kind of a loop running it, or you don't want to run it unnecessarily. It should manage itself. Yeah. Just staring at the side of the screen again,
Yeah.
because Michael's typing in the chat window.
While we're waiting for Michael to type, shall I take the next moderator question?
Good idea.
We've got one, let's see, oh geez, I don't remember who asked these. How to prevent, oh right, Steve. How to prevent the background from being distorted when the window is resized. I presume that means something like an orientation change or something. The background is patterned so it's visible. I'd rather it be cropped. Well, there are attributes that you can set in your XML that define how things are cropped, stretched, or centered. And I think you just look at the reference and specify the right one of those. Does that sound right to you guys?
Sounds fair.
What was I saying?
I don't remember the exact syntax of it, but it's something that you can put in your image align in your align attribute or something like that. Let's see. Auto hide keyboard. How do we auto hide the keyboard? That's another one of our questions from the moderator. Would you have to override OnTouch in your view anywhere, or is there another way to do it, like say on field loses focus or something like that? Maybe you guys with a little more UI experience can answer that.
What's the event that you're trying to auto hide the keyboard?
The question was, how can I auto hide the keyboard when the user touches outside of the edit text? I guess, something like, we're no longer editing this text, so make the edit affordance go away.
Yeah. If it doesn't happen automatically, you can have an on-focus change listener, and when the on-focus change of the edit text goes to not focused anymore, you can hide the keyboard. There is a line of code for hiding the keyboard again, or changing the keyboard state to hidden. Is that all right? Michael, what's wrong with that, if there is anything wrong with it, Michael? Michael's typing for the benefit of those on the live stream. He didn't catch that. Okay. You can have an on-focus change listener on the edit text. Wow. Someone just come on.
Well, you London guys, I'm not seeing your video.
I think London just died, blew up.
Ooh, yikes. Android on ice. Right. Okay, well, I guess it's just us then. I'm sure they'll be back. I hope they'll be back. They own this Hangout. Yeah.
Well, I had a question if I go for the next year.
Sure.
We're coming back in now.
All right.
I really didn't want to answer Michael's question for a second time, so I thought we'd just drop out instead. Or maybe I pressed the wrong button. Who knows? Yeah, so Michael, I was going to say, yeah, the on-focus change listener. And then as soon as the focus of the edit text changes, you can just hide the keyboard. If you can't find the line of code required for hiding the keyboard, I can dig it back out for you. I've used it a few times before.
It's in the input manager, right?
Yeah, input manager dot something.
So, Tal, were you going to ask a question next?
Yes, I wanted to ask about languages and keyboards and stuff like that. I got my hands on an amazing Galaxy S3.
Hey,
quickly.
how about that?
And apparently it has Hebrew keyboard and interface, but for some reason Samsung chose to hide it away from the user. You cannot pick it, but it's there, because I use more locale too, and it's there, but it's just not visible. You cannot pick it, but if you use more locale too, it's there. Now the question is, one, why do you think would they do that, if you have any idea? And
Answer
two,
one, Samsung.
yeah, because you know it's really annoying, because just to give you an idea of money, for like, you know, in Germany the Galaxy S3 costs like 580 euros, give or take, and in Israel it almost reaches it's more than 900 euros.
Wow.
So you see, it's really annoying because the Hebrew is there, they just don't show it, and as a result you pay 400 more euros just to enjoy this Hebrew installed on your device.
Yeah, definitely bring that up with Samsung.
That might actually be a plausible reason, because if I recall correctly, you told me that you acquired this device from outside of Israel.
Yes.
So it's a non-Hebrew SKU. So I could see how maybe they're trying to, trying to get some product differentiation across their line based on
yes,
where
but
you sell it.
400 euros? 400 euros is a bit much for Hebrew experience, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, well, we don't have any control over how Samsung markets their own.
Of course, but but you probably have more connections to them than I have, so if you can pass it along to Samsung in some kind of way, then that would be great, because they really overcharge just to have the Hebrew pre-installed on your device.
Good to know, though.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we generally don't do those kind of things. We have people who work with partners, and they generally discuss these kind of issues.
Well, can you give me some email to contact them, then I'll send them email myself? Because really, it's really annoying, because, I got lucky myself to get the cheaper Galaxy S3 because by chance somebody was in Germany, but it's really annoying if you see for somebody that is not capable of being...
Yeah, I'd say contact Samsung, your local Samsung rep. You have to go through Samsung's site to find any contact address, but that's not really an Android development question, so I think...
Well, the developer questions here would be, can I somehow make it visible and use the keyboard and, let the keyboard be visible as part of, let's say, pre-installed using an app? Using an app to make, because it's there, it's just not accessible.
No.
There's got to be a way.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't know.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see.
Yeah, sorry, can't help you this time with that one. Why shouldn't I make in-app billing requests from another thread? Because it's done it and it's working.
Is it possibly because in-app billing does its own threading, maybe? Because it's got its own client library?
Yeah, I'm not sure it will work on all devices.
I don't know.
I've seen something about this before, but the actual in-app billing requests have to be made from the main thread of the app, especially when you call an app pending intent to launch the Google Play window. So I can't remember why.
I mean, it does need to show some UI.
Yeah, I can understand having to launch the pending intent, which you get returned from the main thread, but I'm not sure why you actually have to do the IPC from the main thread. My best guess would be that, yeah, it does actually do its own threading, because it is invoking IPC. But I haven't actually looked into it deeply, so I'd have to check.
I love that there's a little sidebar conversation going in the chat window from people who aren't actually talking.
Yeah. How are we doing on the moderator today?
We are almost to the end of it, really. The only question I've got left is the third in the set. When using Windows soft input mode equals adjust pan. Can you specify a second view which needs to be visible as well, such as a go button below the edit text? I have no idea. As I said, this question came in at the last minute, and I have nothing else on this one.
Just pan.
Yeah, that was actually my question. I had 3 questions about the virtual keyboard, and if you need to see an example of what I mean, I've got a question on Stack Overflow. I've just put the link on the chat bar.
Cheers.
Okay.
So here's a screenshot. So what I'm trying to do is, when the user taps on that box that says sample, the keyboard comes up and pushes up the whole view, rather than only pushing up the edit text if the edit text is obscured. So as in, I want to make sure that button stays visible at the bottom.
So a simple answer might be put the go button to the right of the edit text.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's ways of getting around it by redesigning the whole layout, but what I'm wondering is if there's a way to kind of not have to redesign the layout, because it's not actually mine, it's something that the client wants me to do. Okay.
Yeah, I've not played with it too much. So is it in just a linear layout? I mean, is the go button anchored to the bottom of the screen?
It's a relative layout.
Yeah, it's a relative layout with the go button anchored to the bottom of the screen, and then this is a simplification of the real layout, but basically the button's anchored to the bottom, the sample box is in the middle, and then there's a graphic at the top that can get pushed out of the screen if we need to.
Sure.
Take the button off the bottom of the screen and put it up in the action bar.
Okay, so I'm hearing that there's no real way to do this.
I'm not sure if I know how to play with it.
I'm not saying there's no way, I just haven't thought about it.
Okay, because I know the other way is I can completely redesign the layout and use a scroll view, and then have it just resize the scroll view, and that will work. But then you can't use kind of align parent bottoms with scroll views because there's no defined height of the view. So I just have to redesign it. Well, while we're thinking about keyboard stuff, the other few questions about keyboards were also from me. I couldn't take part earlier because I was trying to figure out how to get the Hangout working. But the one about making the keyboard auto-hide when you tap outside of the edit text, you said to use an on-focus change listener. The problem is the edit text doesn't actually get a focus change false if you tap in an area that doesn't take focus itself.
Oh.
Okay, I've just posted a comment on that from Stack Overflow. There's a question there which might answer. If you look at the comments for the Hangout at the bottom.
Oh, comments in the Hangout, right.
Check that out.
The comments for the Hangout here.
Yeah, you need to.
Oh, in the Google Plus stream?
I don't see it on this kind of the chat bar on the side, or on is it on the Stack Overflow page?
I'll copy it into the chat bar if you want.
Yeah.
Here, I see it.
Oh, there we go. Oh no, that's very simple. This is just hiding the keyboard when the user taps a button. Yeah, that I know how to do.
Okay.
Problem is detecting when the edit text loses focus.
Yeah, so this one is if they tap anywhere on the screen that's not the edit text. I want the keyboard to go away. Now I found a way of doing this. Sorry?
Can you put a listener on the viewer, the view container?
Yeah, I suppose if we do that, then if we make the entire view container focusable like that, then I guess that would work. That's probably easier than what I was starting to work on, which was...
What was your workaround?
Sorry?
What was your workaround?
My workaround was using the overriding dispatch touch event, and then checking the location of the touch event, whether it was inside all of any edit texts on the screen, and if it wasn't, then hiding it. But it's just more of a pain to do that because I've got a dozen different kind of forms that have edit text, so having to override that on every fragment and was just annoying.
That sounds a little kludgy.
Yeah, it seemed like there had to be a better way to do it.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know it offhand. I don't have a lot of experience with this particular part of the API.
It's edit text, right?
Yeah.
So maybe to do, I don't know, a class that inherits edit text and then put it there somewhere, and then use that all over.
Any other application, or perhaps a sample, just by playing around, that is doing more or less what you're trying to do? Because maybe it's worthwhile just looking at the source code of something.
Well, also, I'd say, do you definitely want to do that? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not the standard behavior, right? There's no other like stock apps which do this behavior. Nothing else kind of dismisses the keyboard when you tap elsewhere, right?
Yeah, that is true. There is it's not standard behavior, but it's one of these where they want an iPhone version and an Android version, and they want them both to behave the same way. And I've told them that you can use the back button to hide the keyboard, but they feel it's not intuitive enough.
So I might push back at them and say, this isn't how Android works, and say, you could perhaps implement a solution, but it's it's working against the platform, as it were. You're having to do kind of workarounds that you don't want to do, and try and encourage them to adopt the Android behavior. Really, that might be a valid case rather than writing some code you don't want to write and maintain.
There is one other thing you can do. You can listen for the touch events in the other windows, and as soon as you get one, hide the keyboard, and then just let the touch event handler continue to process what was going to happen.
Yeah.
You can just do no action other than hide the keyboard and then just return it.
Yeah, that's what the workaround I had at the moment is. It's just that on dispatch touch event, it calls checks it where it fits, and then the next line is return super on dispatch touch event.
Yeah, thinking about it, I mean, the text box still does have the focus. It should still be up. So are you also moving the blinking cursor out of the text box as well? Are you moving focus to something else? Or is the text box still got focus just with no keyboard?
I'm not doing anything with the blinking cursor. I'm not sure I understand
the text box, after you've clicked away and the keyboard disappears.
I'm not sure actually what happens. Let me just check quickly.
I think London just left us again.
Nice. I see that in the
Here.
Back again.
join the group chat. Welcome, Android developers. Would you like to talk about Android development?
Oh, yeah, there we are.
No, that's a good point actually. What I've got at the moment, the blinking cursor still stays in the edit text.
So then how do you bring the keyboard back up again? Are you then listening for someone to tap text again?
Yeah, then if there's a touch event inside an edit text, it pops the keyboard back up.
Yeah, honestly, I would just fight back and just say this isn't how Android works. People won't expect the keyboard to disappear when you touch away. None of the default apps do that, including Gmail and all the search boxes, everything else don't behave in that manner, and it's strange. I mean, you can have an app that's feature parity on both platforms, but takes advantage of the UI patterns from each platform. I'm hoping that you're not following iOS design guidelines for the application as well.
No, I am trying. I'm trying to every battle. There's a lot of battles with the client about how to redesign the app, and I am trying to push back wherever possible, but I don't always win because, well, they're the one paying.
All right.
Right.
Yeah, they are the one paying, but if they ever want the app to be featured, which I'm assuming the answer is yes, then they need to follow the Android design guidelines.
Yes, that is a good point. A good way we could, I could fight with that.
Yeah, we have very few carrots and sticks, so that's a good one.
Yeah, we'll let pretty much any app into the store, unless Bouncer takes it down. But the big neighbour's dog who sits at the store for Google Play. But yeah, you really need to follow the design guidelines if you ever want to stand a chance of getting featured or promoted or being part of any of the, even like the indie games developer promotion that's going on at the moment. All these different things. The editorial team are very, very hot on that and hold our design guidelines very close to their heart.
We understand it's quite hard sometimes fighting back these client requirements, but yeah, things like potential to be promoted is language they sometimes understand.
Also, you can bookmark this point in the video, because this will be on YouTube Live till the end of time, and then just play it back to them.
Okay.
Now, I do think that it's very admirable to want to have the same user experience across all different versions of your application, but you can take it too far. As Clemens Schadmüller says here in the sidebar, do people really have one of each device? Most people probably don't, and they would rather have the one that provides similar functionality within the user interface language that they know and expect, rather than one that is identical to a platform they don't even have, most of the time.
Also, usually, when you choose a platform, you usually don't change so often. Once you lock on the stuff you like, you don't change. Not a lot of people go from Android to iPhone and iPhone to Android. You usually stick with what you start with.
I agree, and when they do change over, they expect it to be different. They'd be quite surprised if you went from one to the other and everything was the same. It wouldn't really be worth switching.
Also, requiring all versions of your application to adopt the exact same user interface convention of one particular version that you've selected is not having a user interface vision. That is outsourcing your design aesthetic to another company.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to double check all the different comment lists on YouTube and everything else and see what we've got going on.
Yeah.
Can I ask something about the camera? Because that's something that I tackled and I looked for it, and it seems there's no solution since 2008, so maybe you can help me with that. About the camera, when you use an intent to capture a picture, in some devices, when you put it in portrait mode and then take a picture, it changes the picture with 90 degrees.
Say that again, please.
Yeah. Some devices rotate the pixels and some just put it in the EXIF.
And it's on the Galaxy S3, on the Galaxy S2, but not on the Galaxy Nexus, for example. The Galaxy Nexus takes the picture, returns it correctly, and the Galaxy S2 and the Galaxy S3 only in portrait. In landscape, they all do it correct. They change it to 90 degrees, and this only happens in portrait mode.
Right. Another thing that happens differently across some devices is when you take a photo with the built-in application and return it back via intent, say you provide a storage location for it. In the intent extras, you give a path. Some devices will take that image and stash it in the gallery. Some don't. Some will put it in SD card / DSIM, which is the universal standard location for photos, and some won't because you gave it another location. Unfortunately,
I see this is a problem because intent's supposed to work in the same way if you see across the platform.
Right. We define what has to be sent back to the caller through the intent. However, our platform does not actually dictate what other side effects may or may not happen with regard to that image. So it's true that they're not all consistent, but because we didn't say what they have to do, we can't really say they're wrong either.
Well, then what would you suggest to do?
Yeah, I think that the right way is to return the pixel array in the natural orientation of the camera sensor and use the EXIF data to indicate what the orientation ought to be. But that's my opinion. Given that the camera can figure out which way it's pointed, some people might reasonably argue that it would be correct to actually turn the pixels. So.
Well, the interesting thing is when you take it in portrait mode on the Galaxy S2 and Galaxy S3, it shows you, when it turns it to 90 degrees, it shows you like it's at 0 degrees. It's not on 90. So you cannot recognize by the degree that it's in. And then change it back. So one thing I thought is instead of it, I would just automatically turn it 90, and then instead of being screwed by the Galaxy S2 and Galaxy S3, being screwed by the Galaxy Nexus. Because there's a lot less of them.
Sounds like you should write a compatibility test suite test.
The other thing you can do is if you find that generally it sounds like you're having problems or issues with Samsung devices, is sign up to their Android developers blog and ask them if you find that some APIs aren't performing exactly according to the way we specified. Sorry?
It's also HTC and Sony.
Okay, sure. Same thing.
Yeah, that's why a CTS test would be perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Okay.
See, this is why people who make platforms hate to have people actually use them, because they keep on running into these implementation details. Just get distracting. Everything is so much purer if you just read the online documentation and kind of think about it and call it a day.
Well, but it's something that Samsung, HTC, and other companies changed, because on the Nexus it works perfectly. So it's something that they added change that causes this problem.
Yeah, they have their own camera implementations. They don't use the stock camera implementation.
Oh,
But
well.
I can understand your pain. Like, if they're not, returning, following the same patterns, and it feels like it's something that should probably be covered by a CTS test. And if there isn't one already, then you're free to write one and submit one.
CTS?
Sorry, carry on.
CTS, yes, the compatibility test suite. So it's a series of tests that every single Android device that wants to run the Google mobile services has to pass.
Okay.
Have you also looked whether there are any specific SDKs that Samsung or those OEMs release as part of the downloads for the Android SDK?
Well, I looked, I compared it on both versions on gingerbread and ice cream, and they both do the same thing, because I've got the Galaxy S2 with gingerbread and I've got the Galaxy S3 with ice cream, and they...
No, what I mean is that some OEMs provide as part of our Android SDK download some special libraries. Have you checked in there? When you're running the SDK manager?
Okay. I don't think there's anything special for Samsung.
Covering all the angles.
I know there's Motorola, but I don't think there's any Samsung. I'll check, but I don't think so.
Might be worth it.
There may be a Samsung device in there. Okay, in the meantime, we have another question in the dory from Magno Paolo. Using ViewPager, is it possible to skip some views based on some condition? For example, may normal view flow on the ViewPager is A to B to C to D. If someone presses an option first, can we go from A to D?
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
In your adapter, I guess you could have that.
You're just getting an event and instantiating a little handler function, right? So.
Yeah, you can either have it in the adapter and just miss the pages out when they're asked for them, or you can do viewpager.setCurrentItem, and then there's an option on setCurrentItem to go to the item number, and also whether you want to smooth scroll to it or whether you just want to flick to it. So you could use either.
There's a sample code out there that I believe it's part of the support v4 demo sample that mashes up a tab host together with a fragment pager or a view pager. And it does like Rich just said, because of course when you hit the different tabs, there's no sequential, right? It's just whichever one you pick. And so it has to push the right one into both places. So go ahead and download the support v4 demo sample and look at that one. I think it's called Fragment Tab Pager or something like that. And there's also, I took that same demo and I stuck it into a code.google.com project called, I think I called it Sherlock Demo, which takes that exact same piece of code and sticks it up in the Sherlock action bar. So that's a couple places you might look at how to get essentially random access into your fragments in your...
Good idea, Sparky. That would be it. Yeah, there's a few of those examples, aren't there, for tabs? There'd be definitely a place to look for that. Clever. There was one other from Johan. I haven't read this yet, so who knows where we're going to go here. Is it possible to hook into the phone callback APIs like when sending GSM codes? When I try to send a request to acquire the status of my own phone number broadcasted or not, I only get a dialog pop up as the answer, but I need the answer as text. So you want to dial a star hash number maybe to get the status of the phone and then receive. Well, the way I would consider doing it is looking in the source code for the phone app. See what the phone app does.
They can dial it up yet.
Yeah.
I think some of that stuff is handled by privileged libraries.
It may be
hard to tap into those.
Is it Dino?
I think you can dial those things, but you may not be able to read the responses.
Sorry?
Oh, phone book, yeah.
Could be. Not
I think people usually send those codes by sending an intent to the dialer.
What? Oh. Shit, I was blind to it. Not that I can post this anywhere because I'm not logged into the Dory at the moment. But yeah, look in phone.git and see how they manage it in there for star hash numbers. There'll be a bit of special source in there because there's some things which don't actually make phone calls, like star hash 06 hash and star hash 0000 hash. So somewhere around there, there'll be the special code for dealing with.
But yeah, you're right. It might have to be signed by the system set to do that.
Yeah, it may well be in the secure package, or yeah. And if it is, then you just can't do it. It's quite likely you can't do it unless you somehow. No, you just can't. But at least you'll be able to find the answer in phone.git in the Android source code.
So I did look at my APK manager while you guys were or my SDK manager while you guys were discussing this other question, and there's at least one Samsung plugin for the SDK because there's one for the Galaxy Tab.
That's skin, yeah.
But I didn't see any for any other devices.
Is it just a skin or is it the entire ROM? Okay. Oh, that's system image.
No, one of the first ones I thought.
Paul Blundell is typing about the SMS MMS. I've seen that the database definition changed for different phones. The database definition is, yeah, it's black box.
Yeah, it's also.
You shouldn't be reading that database directly necessarily.
Yeah, there isn't a published content provider for those things.
There are people who do access them for doing SMS backup and other things, but it's completely down to the handset manufacturer. If they want to change the SMS app and put a custom SMS app on there, then they can do that.
Okay.
How do third company SMS applications work? What do you mean? You can register for, you can read and write SMSs. You can get that the permission, and then when SMSs come in, you just process them and put them inside your app and store them however you want to store them. They shouldn't be reading and writing directly from the.
Yeah, we're talking about the default store is yeah, private implementation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
people get kind of twitchy about what you do with SMSs. The ability to read and write, to send and receive the messages is pretty carefully controlled because it has the ability to A, cost the user money, and B, screw with the telephone network. So
that's true.
Operators don't like that.
Came out using the default SMS application, and that's fair enough. And if they did, they'll use the default messaging database. But the database isn't a published API, so we may change the format of it with every release. Yeah, it's certainly nothing that's guaranteed.
It's a similar story to the calendar content provider. For the longest time, there wasn't a published public API for the calendar, and many apps, worked it out and operate over the calendar and worked fine. But as Rich says, that implementation could change at any time and break that application. It wasn't until Ice Cream Sandwich when there's a published public content provider that there's a contract, so you can now operate against that contract and assume it's going to work.
Moving on one more time. Yeah, that was me.
So Paul Blundell in the chat asks, what would you recommend to use, an XML pull parser or a default handler for SAX parsing, i.e. which is faster or uses less memory? I've not really used the SAX parser too much, but I believe the pull parser is generally the way to go.
That's my plus one. Definitely go for the pull parser. I used to use a SAX parser, but I've switched to the XML pull parser as well. It's more efficient. It's easier to use. You skip all the tags that you're not looking for. And yeah, I would go for the XML pull parser.
But yeah, don't use XML.
Yeah, there's an article on the Android developer blog which I'll post a link to about this.
There is?
Yes.
There is?
I'll put it on.
I can stick it in the chat. Oh, Sparky's already on it. He's put a sample in of the support library fragment tab page. That was for. Can you put that in the Dory as well, Sparky, on that question? Because I'm not logged into the Dory at the moment.
Oh, did that go into the moderator? I didn't see that.
Yeah, it came on the moderator.
The substitute Dory for moderator.
My bad.
Well,
International product name. Product names.
Yeah, I'll put this in.
It's in there.
You've added it to the...
What would you recommend? XML full parser or SAX parser? Yeah, I decided on XML full parser as well.
I remember reading a good article about this on IBM Developer Works, which was really interesting.
Yes, yes. XML full parser seems to be more Androidy. It's used internally. Like I think even the intent system uses XML full parser to marshal and unmarshal the extras in the intents.
Yeah, and menus, like when you inflate a menu, for example, yeah, it uses the full parsing line stuff.
Love it. Such a good idea.
In that's Action Mark Compound talking about that.
Action Mark Compact uses the full parser to parse that. Lots of nodding heads on screen. 28 minutes to go. Okay. Oh, my call. Yes, you can.
Just plus one, or do something like that. So Tyler, I've not managed to get my hands on the Galaxy S3 yet. What are your first impressions? Oh, no, Tyler's not there.
He's there. He's just not speaking. Hey, Tal. If you come back, can you tell us... Oh, is that Noam, actually? Oh, no, no. Yeah, can you tell us your thoughts on the Samsung Galaxy S3? We still don't have one here? Well, I don't have one here. Galaxy Next.
I got a message from him the other day, and I think the first thing that he said about it was, it's big.
It's big. Definitive review of the Galaxy S3.
It's big.
So here's my Galaxy S3. It's big. Also dead. Unfortunately. Come on, people, ask some questions. We've got 13 minutes to go, and...
Okay, well, I've got a question. It was one you briefly alluded to earlier on the moderator. I've just put a link to a screenshot of what the problem is. It's when the keyboard pops up. It's distorting the background that's on my relative layout.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want, if you look at the image, it's really obvious what the problem is. And I'd rather it cropped the background rather than it resized it like that.
So you're using adjust resize rather than adjust pan there, by the way.
And this one, it's an adjust resize, yeah, because the space where that kind of checkered layout is, that's just a list view normally. So it makes sense to use an adjust resize.
And are you using a background image on the view, or are you using an image view as the background?
That's the background of the relative layout that's holding all of that. Sorry, that's holding the bit in the middle.
Yeah. As a background to a relative layout, it may be trickier. You can definitely do it if you make an image view as the background layer, and then set the scale type. Excuse me, set the scale type.
So what would the scale types change from? So what I want it to be like matrix, I suppose? Or?
I'm just bringing them up now. Center crop. It depends, yeah, whether you want to create an image that's big enough to fit, or whether are you scaling the image up as it is?
It shouldn't be. That image is bigger than a normal kind of 800 by 480 screen, but it wouldn't fit a tablet. So it needs to be stretched if it's on a tablet to make sure it fills all the corners. I suppose I could provide a bigger image, but
No, you don't really want to.
Could you tile that image by the looks of it?
Tiling it would be a really good one, yeah.
well, that's an idea.
I don't know. I haven't heard of being able to both stretch and center or crop. I kind of thought you had to choose.
I like the idea of tiling really, because then you can have a much smaller image, and just have an XML drawable wrapping it, setting the tile mode. So
if I'm tiling it like that, at that point, are we having to use like a a surface view behind to actually draw it out in
No,
multiple.
if you want to tile it, you can just do a shape drawable.
Oh yeah.
So you just have an XML, a little
not
XML
a shape
map.
drawable, just a bitmap drawable, I believe, and then you can set the tile mode to repeat, I think, in the bitmap drawable, and then you can just set that as your background drawable resource.
Okay.
Is it bitmap drawable? Like
I'll find it for you. There's a small amount of XML you can wrap around the image.
so it's
Okay.
bitmap drawable, yeah.
I was going to copy and paste it in, but I'll copy and paste the Stack Overflow. Yeah, and then you just stick that little bit of XML inside your layout instead of the...
And that has the benefit that you'll be able to have a much smaller...
Yeah, you can just have a 4x4 durable, like numbers of print things you've got.
Yeah, that would also mean that for we don't have to have multiple versions for tablets and everything. That would work.
Just scale out and fill the whole thing and repeat.
Although you might lose that nifty gradient.
Just make that your background image.
Yeah, just set that as your background, so your Android background refers to...
There's the total examples in that link here.
Can
And
you,
other people who aren't inside the chat, I will post that link onto the comment thread for the videos, for the Hangout as well. Tiling a background.
so can Steve do that with the tiling and still have that neat gradient that goes across the screen?
What is Fox saying?
can you put up the Dropbox link again?
Maybe do that as a...
Well, that little thing at the bottom can be a separate image layered on top. In fact, it already is. If you're talking about kind of the red with the stitching at the top. Or what gradient were you talking about?
Yeah, because it looks like it's sort of darker on the left and lighter on the right.
Oh, it does.
Oh, yes, actually, no, you're right, it is.
Well, you can just do that with a layer drawable, right? So if you have a layer which is a gradient and a layer behind it which is the bitmap tiles, you could probably do it that way.
Yeah, that would work.
Layer drawable, is that the one?
Yeah, then the gradient is just a 1 pixel strip which goes across the top.
Yeah.
It's 1 pixel deep, and then the width of the
I
gradient.
just use a gradient drawable rather than...
Even though, yeah, use
Yeah,
gradient.
You want to be careful with how many transparent layers that you have. I understand that some devices are quite limited with how many simultaneous stacked transparent layers they can deal in hardware. So you don't want to have more than like 2 or 3 transparent textures.
That's true. I don't know how layer, I haven't looked at the implementation of layer drawable, but I'm hoping it kind of composes it into one image and doesn't like hold on to that transparency, but we'll see.
Yeah, or I can maybe use an XML layer list with the bitmap drawable and then the gradient on top.
I was talking about layer list, not layer drawable.
Yeah, that might work. Okay, I'll try that.
A couple of XML files, and then you end up with a map which scales to every screen size.
Yeah, I much prefer to define things in XML because they're much more likely to scale nicely with things like tablets and so on than if I'm trying to, pick the maximum size of drawable to include in the APK.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right, I see that Mitchell wants more information about large emulators. He doesn't want to just go with my snarky suggestion of downloading Google TV SDK. So
You rejected your answer.
yes. But he didn't reject it. He simply said he wanted more.
Further expand on this, I'm currently using
Google TV available for Windows. Windows? Do people use Windows? Like for real? No.
You'll be surprised. It's quite popular Windows. I know it's quite strange.
No, the GTV SDK is based on KVM, right? So it's Linux anyway, right?
Yeah, Google TV cannot work on Windows.
The SDK, yeah, I think you might have to run it in a VM.
Well, I'm just trying to do what he said, to run this configuration and see what happens.
Oh yeah.
If my computer crashes or anything else crashes.
You see that from Michael there.
Well, you asked about the S3 in the meantime. It's quite a nice device, The S voice is quite nice also. It actually really recognizes my voice.
Really?
The disadvantage is it doesn't sync with Google for Calendar for some reason. It doesn't download all of my new stuff that I had.
Huh. What, have they replaced the calendar implementation with their own?
I guess so, because like when I first of all created my user, it actually worked. You know, it synced all of my information. But now that I add new events, it doesn't sync.
Huh. Have you gone into the accounts and settings and checked that all the syncing items are syncing?
Yes.
Okay.
Very cool.
Ah, sounds like a bug.
Sounds like a bug.
So in the chat comments, Paul Blundell asked a question. If you are not creating an app widget, is there any reason to use a service for my app's background tasks? Could I just use a singleton reference from the application? So to which I say yes, there's lots of good reasons. The main being is kind of how Android is set up. So there's lots of framework around the service class which you can make use of. So things like the ability to restart a service if it gets killed off by the system, should you need it. What else can services do? The ability to have a binder interface so that apps can interface with you.
You can have your service running at a different priority to the main application, so if the application gets killed, the service still runs, like the music player, for example. You keep playing music in the service, even if the UI disappears.
It's basically the way Android has been built for doing tasks which don't require a UI, whereas a singleton, you might have to write a lot of this functionality yourself. So I would say use the framework where you can, because it's been written to help you out.
I also like to always point out that the syntax for using an intent service, I think, is simpler than creating an async task.
Mm-hmm.
Very true.
And if you're talking about using a singleton just for holding application scope data, I would say you're probably better off using shared preferences.
Interesting. So you might want them in memory the whole time.
And in the chat, Michael asks if singletons are discouraged on Android. I don't think they are. I think they have their time and their place. But I just think when you're talking about doing background services, the service class is being created especially for this kind of thing. So and it helps you out in a lot of ways. So I wouldn't discard them just because you haven't used them before. I'd embrace them.
But at the same time, not unnecessary. Yeah, it can take more resources. But singletons are fine to use for whatever you want.
Yeah, Michael is saying here, shared preferences are slower. Well, that depends on how you store them. I mean, or especially in the singleton. Like I've seen discussion where people said you should implement a map in your singleton and use key value pairs in this map in your application level singleton. And my thought there reading that was, well, how do you think shared preferences work? I mean, isn't it exactly the same? So.
Yeah, I thought shared preferences were written in XML to the flash memory. I think is Michael Hedler saying as well.
Michael
There's some caching involved.
In general, getting back to services, I mean, it's also much more robust to implement according to the best practices for Android, because sooner or later you might want to change something, and then you find yourself having to redevelop a whole bunch of code because you didn't use a service in the first place.
And going back to, is it Michael or Michelle? I don't want to mispronounce your name. Problem instantiating the emulator. So I think we're not really being much help here. Like I think the best place to actually file this kind of thing is if you go to tools.android.com. The tools team who create the the Eclipse plugin and work on the emulator and so on might be better placed to answer this question. So if you post in their user groups, they're very responsive in there. They might be able to help debug this question. Whereas I don't think you've got the right people here.
Yeah, the only other thing I can think is maybe try to see if you can launch it with a whole bunch more memory in your host process, if you can. And just see whichever places you can go to give it more memory. Try to give it more memory.
I just gave it a go and it worked fine. It's on a configuration with Core i7 and 6 gigabyte of RAM.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're about out of time.
We are.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining in and giving us, once again, a lively discussion of the latest and greatest topics in Android development for this week. And we will see you all again at this time next week. So, everyone, cheers.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Good discussion.